So, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has just made history. A new record has been set. This article is from cosmicbook.news. Marvel's Ant-Man 3 breaks Batman vs. Superman record. Quantumania sets a new record for a superhero film. So let's break out the balloons, champagne, and party favors. This is, of course, sarcastic. In its second weekend at the box office, Batman vs. Superman saw a huge drop of 69.1%, which at the time was the record for the worst second weekend drop of any superhero film opening to $100 million or more. Now that's all changed with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. In its own second weekend, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania dropped 69.7%, setting a new record for the worst second weekend drop of any superhero film opening to $100 million or more. Ant-Man 3 opened last week with $106 million, but this weekend the film only brought in $32.2 million, where the drop is actually a lot more if we count the holiday weekend opening of $120 million. Batman vs. Superman also opened on a holiday weekend. The two films also have low Rotten Tomatoes scores in common, as the critics gave Batman vs. Superman a 29%, with Ant-Man 3 at 48%. I think that's generous, considering the film is absolute rubbish. The second lowest Marvel score behind Eternals. I would have ranked Batman vs. Superman higher than Ant-Man 3, to be honest. It's really not surprising. As I pointed out in my review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the film is so utterly mediocre and underwhelming, and it doesn't even take itself all that seriously. I mean, what's really occurred to me in recent years with these MCU films since Endgame is that there's no longer any sense of impending danger for the characters. The stories aren't suspenseful anymore. I just find myself watching these films very detached emotionally from them. There's no emotional connection whatsoever. There's lots of CGI, there's lots of action, it's breakneck speed, and the tension and suspense are never really allowed to build because there's always a cheap gag just a few seconds or minutes away, some cheesy witty banter and typical Disney Marvel comedy. It totally spoils the tone of the movie and causes it to devolve into a childish farce. Compare a film like this to the MCU movies in the first three phases, where you actually cared about the characters and where the stories were genuinely engaging. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania suffered from not only being an uninteresting and dull story, but the visual effects were pretty poor for the film as well, with a dreadfully bland colour palette for the CGI environments in the quantum realm. This article is from Bounding Into Comics. Marvel VFX artists admit Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania looks awful, revealed studio shifted all the money and all the best resources to Wakanda Forever. From an overall aesthetic that looks more reminiscent of Spy Kids than a multi-billion-dollar film franchise, to the revival of Darren Cross as a Humpty Dumpty-esque version of MODOK. That's a good way of putting it. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is plagued with questionable CGI, and as many already know, whether through social media or by catching Marvel's latest outings themselves, this is not the first time in recent years that audiences have been put off by the poor visual quality of the studio's efforts. In particular, Black Widow, She-Hulk Attorney at Law, and Thor: Love and Thunder all left audiences baffled with their abysmal CGI quality. According to some of the very same VFX artists who worked on Ant-Man's latest adventure, the film's lacking CGI was not the result of their team's skills and dedication, but rather Marvel's reluctance to actually invest any of their profits back into their product. The insight into Marvel's inner turmoil was provided by three VFX artists, all of whom chose to remain anonymous for fear of professional retaliation. In respective interviews about the situation given to Vulture, as per a technician who has worked on multiple Marvel projects and whose employer was hired to provide CGI services for both Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and its MCU predecessor Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, in terms of priority, Wakanda Forever was definitely at the top of the list. All the money went to that. All the best resources went to that. It's understandable given the context, with Chadwick and everything, and how well the first film did, they conceded, but it did diminish the ability to carry Ant-Man all the way through. The technician then further recalled how for Ant-Man, there were a lot of editorial changes happening toward the latter third and fourth of the project that were just too late. There's a point of no return. Why certain things were changed, why certain notes were nitpicked longer than they should have been, that's on Marvel, but it definitely did cause a lot of tension, turmoil, and weight on everybody at his employer, whose company name has been redacted. To be honest, I think a lot of the CG in Black Panther Wakanda Forever looked pretty poor as well, especially the end battle with Ironheart and the new Black Panther. It just looked like video game CGI in places, and some of the green screening work I think was very weak. The article continues, unfortunately it is noticeable that there were shortcuts they added. Certain things were used to cover up incomplete work. Certain editorial cuts were made to not show as much action or effects as they could have been, likely because there just wasn't enough time to render everything. There was a lot of shortening and rolling of shots. Rolling is when you don't shorten or lengthen a shot, you just move it a few frames in the cut. It really did feel like certain scenes were trimmed or otherwise altered to either save money, save time, or cover up the inability to get it done. The article also contains portions of interviews with 2 other artists involved, so I'll leave the link to the article below for you to read. Either way, Phase 5 of the MCU is not off to a great start, visually, critically, or at the box office it seems. Thanks very much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.